Welcome to I Finally Get It. This week we have Weinstein with Approved Mortgage. In studio with us as always, Dustin Webb, our producer. I'm your host, Jeff Martin. Let's get it.
I finally get that it's okay to not have it all figured out yet and move forward anyway. I find with my personality, one of the things that I really struggled with that I've learned to overcome more and more as I got older was not waiting for everything to be perfect to try it out. So that's kind of something that I know now that is like my superpower, is that I don't have it all figured out and I try anyway. And then I kind of adapt in the middle of it. And that used to be very, very scary for me.
I'm going to tell you, as a business coach, not to push me, but the people that I've worked with and myself, it is so hard because we don't want to look stupid. You know what I mean? Things are new and we may be confident over here, but we don't know how to get in front of a camera and talk. So we put things off until we feel like we're perfect. So done is better than perfect.
And then you look up and you're like, wait, time is going really fast. And if I keep waiting, everyone else is passing me by. And all of my goals of where I want to go are passing me by. And I don't even know if I'm good at it or not because I'm just overthinking it.
This really is one of the biggest challenges out there in business today for business owners, marketing, just execution. So thank you for bringing that to us.
Thank you.
What got you to a point where you go, you know what, I'm putting things off. I'm not doing things. I want to hear about the struggle, the realization.
Probably parenting. If I'm honest, parenting. I'm like your mama that will sit down in the middle of the store, even if I inconvenience the person behind me, to like teach my children how things work. And as I was realized, my mom and I talk about this, I was not parented like that. And so as I'm learning to parent, I'm like, there are parts of me that were still never parented, that I thought you do it the first time, you better do it right. And with my kids, I'm like, it's okay, try again. Let's try again. Or you said that incorrectly. What's a better way? Let's try again. And so honestly, God really started dealing with my heart on, you're still being parented by me. And it's okay as you grow. Like adults have so much pressure that, okay, now I'm 34, I should have it all figured out. He really started talking to me like, who told you that? And so I started thinking back like, oh yeah, this is something someone else told me that is not necessarily true. I don't have to be 34 and have it figured out. I don't have to do things the first time and it be the way I do it forever. So that was something that I really had to get to. I'm like, okay, if I do this once, this is not marriage. I'm not committing to it forever.
Yeah.
I can change it. I can say, hey, that was our policy. It didn't really work out how I thought. We're going to change it to this.
And that's how we should go about things, right? Because you're continuous improvement, iterate until you get it right. And then you still can change things to grow and improve. That's huge. It's a huge lesson.
It's huge. I'm still trying to figure it all out sometimes because it's hard to like grasp.
So how many kids do you have?
I have 2.
What are their ages?
Lily is 5.
Yeah.
And then Abraham is 3.
Oh my goodness. And they're going to hear their names on a podcast.
And they're going to love it.
Yes,
I'm
that's outstanding.
I heard one time that the sweetest sound to the human ear was their own name.
Yeah.
And so one of the big things at our office that I try to do is I'm like, make sure if you remember anything, remember someone's name. It's like a psychological thing where it's like,
that's a light bulb moment right there.
I love this. I was excited about the light bulb.
That is a huge lesson. Just look them in the eye, say their name. That is huge.
Huge.
So you teach all of your staff, support staff and everybody just to do that?
Yeah. Support staff is really my niche at the office.
Really?
I am personnel. I love people. I'll cry thinking about it. Like I really, really care about people. So teaching them things that God has taught me or teaching them things I made mistakes on, whatever area of their life, that's really where I'm most passionate about. I love my clients. I do. And I treat my clients just like that.
Yeah.
But like, it's so sweet to have a staff where they get to kind of grow in a healthy environment too.
Yeah. Help develop them both personally and professionally. And you'll never be wrong. And today it's really hard to find people that are willing to work and want to work and stay with you. So I have to commend you. If you have a team that you're developing and they're growing and they want to stay there, you're doing it right.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you.
You are doing it right.
Well, and I think as you say that, one of the lies that I believe that no one ever told me different till recently, I just thought naturally the further you got in years, the easier it got. And I'm like, wait, it kind of seems to be a little bit the opposite. Like, I feel like year 7, I thought we would have arrived, and it's like, so it's totally different than it was. So you're still constantly adapting.
You'll always be working on the people side of your business, you know, but if you're lucky and you're growing, you'll end up having problems later, but they're good problems to have because, you know, and they growing pains, they say that for a reason. But, you know, we'll always have issues we have to resolve, right? Because we're growing and improving and getting into new markets, doing new things.
Yeah.
So good for you. Good for you. So how did you get into business and why?
Well, honestly, I come from, I'll say I come from, my husband comes from just a long line of business owners. So I'm a first generation business owner. I'm a first generation college graduate and business owner. So honestly, I had graduated college. I lived internationally as a missionary for a while, and I really didn't know what I wanted to do with my degree. Kind of got it, and that's about as far as I knew. And so I had just gotten married. We were kind of praying about what to do. And then this opportunity presented itself to me to become a mortgage broker. I loved it, but I was 24 and I never got a mortgage before. So I remember being like, well, I don't even know how to spell mortgage at this point. Like, I've never done this before. And I remember them telling me they don't know that.
Yeah.
They don't know that. Don't tell them that. Don't tell them you're new. It's just however you conduct yourself is the degree to which the confidence they'll have in you. And so I'm like, okay, confidence in myself. Okay, I can do that. And so just like learning mortgages. And I did that for a couple years. God just really put it on our heart to start our own mortgage company. And my husband, I didn't even know how to start an LLC. So that's really where he comes into play. He like came in, he's like, what do you want to do? What do you want it to be called? He set it all up for me. It's been so sweet because we were able to create a culture, which is really what my passion was. And I never knew that I'd be able to start a business one day. Never even thought about it, to be honest.
Really?
Never.
That's incredible.
Never.
So you get out of college and you go serve on mission work, right? I want to know more about that. Where were you and what were you doing?
So I lived in Mozambique, Africa.
Oh my goodness.
I lived there for 3 months. It was basically, we only worked with unreached people. They had never heard the gospel before. No electricity, no running water. So, my life was forever changed then. That's when I really I knew God had been saved for probably a year whenever I went over there. But you'd have to walk almost a mile to get buckets of water. Then you would come back and you would dump the buckets of water in there. And you would take a bath in that, and that's how you would wash your clothes. But I learned all these things about myself when I was there. It was really life-changing because some of the kids would come from the village who hadn't eaten days. Yeah. And if you gave them one bread roll, they would pass it around. And so that's when I really learned about really God's heart on generosity, which is cool to come back around to business. My husband does all the financials, and he's really big on everything should be measurable, and let's measure everything. And I love that. But what I measure the most is people. And then the degree to which we make more money is the degree to which we meet more needs. So for me, it still goes back to that time in my life, 10 plus years ago when I lived overseas, where I'm like, the needs are great. I never want to forget that need and how that felt in that moment and how generous they were. And I want to make sure that even as God continues to advance me in a business and I make more money than I made the year before, what am I doing with it?
Yeah.
You know, so
I love it.
I'm really thankful for that.
So how do you measure people in your work today?
I always measure, and this might not be how a lot of people measure, I always measure their home life. So my first question whenever I sit down with my employees, I'll always ask, how's your husband and how are your children? I'll look at their numbers, and usually I can tell sometimes that the reason their lack of production usually equates home life stress.
Yeah, you're right. You're 100% right.
They'll tell you, my husband and I mentor almost all of them for their marriages, and I'm like their children's godmother. They've all given me space to be able to really counsel them on their families. Some of them are older than me, and some of them are not. And I find that that's really where I try to measure success. How's your husband? Would he say you're forsaking him to make more money? Well, then I'm losing. I'm not doing a good job as a leader here. If you're making me more money, but he's he's not well, then I've probably missed the mark here. So that's really how I measure it. Then my husband's like, yeah, I love that. But sometimes he's like, but. I
love it. And do you do regular check-ins?
Regular check-ins.
Yeah.
We do for sure monthly. I ideally like bi-weekly.
Yeah.
Summertime's coming around, so they're usually out more because they're 100% commission. They work remote from their phone, from their computer or from their phone. So that requires more intentionality on my part just to make sure I'm having to like chase them down sometimes if I have to, which is my model. That's my bit. It doesn't work for everybody because it's a lot of emotional output that you wouldn't get in some businesses where that's not your primary focus, you know?
Yeah, but your culture is a reflection of the way you go about it. So I'm sure they love working there.
We talk about this all the time. I actually recently just had an employee leave last Wednesday. And it was a sweet time only because we talked about it and I said, this is my leadership style and I never want to disrespect your boundaries, but I'm going to keep pushing and I'm going to keep asking and I'm going to keep asking you to show up for yourself.
Yeah. Yeah.
And if you're not ready or it's too hard to let me in or let me teach you how to show up for yourself, that's fine. But there's going to be a lot of push back and forth. And then we both agreed this wasn't the season to where she was supposed to be working for me.
Yeah.
And those are hard things because you have to be very careful to like self-evaluate, but also not like lose your vision and realize it might not work for everybody.
On the show, I don't really talk about what I do with clients, but I really do help install internal coaching programs into companies. And what you're doing is coaching. And it's a beautiful, you're right alongside with them, going through them, helping develop both professionally and personally. And then their productivity usually pays off, right? And so I just say, keep it up. Keep doing what you do.
Thank you.
That's and you're a rarity. You know, I was an entrepreneur for 36 years, and I realized when I started coaching, like, I've been coaching for 3 decades. Right?
Wow.
You know what I mean?
Wow.
But some people just do it a little bit differently, and I love hearing that you're doing it. Tell me about the mortgage industry right now. I know we're in a weird economic time. Are things okay? Are they getting better?
I feel like they're slightly better. Rates have come down a little bit. I think what's hard right now is there's a lot of pressure for people to continue to increase their lifestyle while so many other expenses have increased. So I find that's the hardest part ethically in my job is that I always tell my clients, I'm like, listen, just because you can doesn't mean that you should. But ethically, at the end of the day, I'm not allowed to tell you no. If you can qualify, you can qualify.
Sure.
So I find that's a hard thing for me to navigate in this industry right now. The pressure for people to continue they need more home. They can't really afford more home. But technically on paper, they can. And just all the uncertainty of not knowing where it's going to go.
Yeah, sure.
You know,
sure.
Everyone's on different levels when it comes to their financial understanding or ability. So
yeah, correct.
It's like just because the rate is a little better, but I don't know.
Yeah.
And then for some people, it's like, yeah, this makes so much sense.
Who's your ideal kind of client?
My ideal client is any kind of W-2 client.
So what would you tell those business owners who are 1099 and you give them some kind of guidance?
I would probably tell them that you can't have both worlds. So if you really want to utilize your write-offs, then you're probably not going to be able to qualify for the amount of home that you want. That's the hard part, especially as a self-employed borrower. You're going to look at 24 months of taxes. You average it over 24 months, and then you're using that average income, which is not the same for other people. So you really have to file 2 years of strong tax returns without utilizing any of those losses, even though you could to save yourself on your tax liability. But you can't really if you want to buy a house. So that's the hard part.
Yeah.
You're like, you're going to pay the taxes on it or you're going to be able to buy the home. It's hard, you know.
So, I'm really intrigued because you never thought about being a business owner.
Never.
And yet you jumped into it and you've done very, very well. What'd you do tell me about yourself growing up because there's got to be some thread in there that motivated you.
And I come from lower income family in Arkansas. My parents are divorced and I always saw their struggle. I also saw that I really didn't have much control over anything that happened to me. I was kind of a product of my environment. A light bulb moment for me was when I got older and I'm like, wait a minute, I am in control of what happens to me now. So that means my talent or my status, all of that might have mattered when I was younger. But now as an adult, really it just matters. I don't have to be the most talented in the room. I just have to outwork everybody else. And so I really taught myself to keep the vision before me and like talk to myself, like even emotionally and mentally about I had what it took and I was willing to do the work for myself and then I could change the course of my story. And so changing the course of my story, which I'll cry thinking about that, is now changed the course of my mother's story. She'll tell me all the time, like, well, you're such a better parent than me. I'm like, well, I had my first child at 29. You were 19.
Yeah.
You know, financially, my husband made sure we had a certain amount of funds and we'd been married 5 years and our marriage was in a state. You know, my mom was divorced by the time I was 1. Like it was totally different. So I think growing up like that, I knew a lot of what I did not want while also really spending time to like, okay, what do I want? And then by the grace of God, marrying a man who is an entrepreneur, he really just like forced me out. Yeah, and he really showed me like how to navigate the way when it comes to the business side of things, which I'm very fortunate with.
You get another light bulb, right? And actually there are about 3 nuggets in there. Change the course of your story, right? And you tell yourself that I can do this. Mm-hmm. And then push through, you know what I mean? And just because you have certain an environment growing up or whatever, you can change the course of your life by just sticking to it and moving. And I love that you honor your husband, you know what I mean? And
Thank you.
So has he been pretty inspirational throughout your journey?
He's been very inspirational. I have to be very careful with him though, because if I say it, he believes it. And so if I say I want to do something, he's going to forsake everything else to like give me what I want 10 years in. Yeah. So I'm like, when I said I wanted to start a mortgage company, he definitely just did it. And I remember he set me down and he was like, okay, you have 4 months to make it work.
Oh like, my goodness.
What does that mean? He's like, you said you can do this. Let's do it. I'll give you 4 months. Make your calls. Don't sit over here thinking about how you're the youngest in the room and you're the most inexperienced. He was like, you don't think about those things. You make it happen. It takes what it takes, make it happen. Yeah. And so I remember sitting on fold out tables with one of my employees, Chase, and I hired him from the beginning because I had to have a salaried employee. And I was like, we have no clients. And it takes 45 days. And Sam gave us 4 months. And Chase is like, well, we're going to pray and then we're going to go to work. And so that's what we do. We pray and then we go to work. I'm like, yeah. What can I do? What's in my control? Who can I call? What can I do? So my husband does a really good job at that. Like he sees 0 limitations on me, which helps me stay in my confidence, really. Sure.
But he obviously was right.
No.
You know? Yeah. He was right. Is he in the business too? Or
He is. He runs the day-to-day operations. I don't really know all the things he does. He sits me down once a month and shows me my P&L, tells me where I overspent, where I underspent. I remember one time he said, a lot of people can make money, okay? Yeah. But no one knows how to keep it.
It's hard to keep it.
I'm going to keep the money. Right. And so his main thing is he keeps the money. He reinvests the money. He really shows me like this is where it's best spent. The best investment is yourself and other people. Absolutely. And so he's really good at like if a need comes and we invest in them, he's always like this is the best investment of our lives. So he runs that and then he does some other stuff that I'm not a part of per se. I do the admin for him sometimes, but
y'all are both aligned on the people side, and you're both investing in people one way or the other. Yeah. I got to have him on the show.
You'll love him.
I mean, the world needs to hear about how to save money.
Yeah.
It's rough.
He's great. He's great at it.
Yeah. So what would you tell somebody who's, this is a lady or a man who has never thought about becoming an entrepreneur and they strike out to do it. What would you tell them to how to start?
I would tell them that you have to take a mortgage exam to pass, and in general, you have to take it and pass, and you only get 3 chances. If you fail on your 3rd chance, you have to wait 6 months. And I failed twice. And I remember on the 2nd time, I told my husband, I didn't really want to do this anyway. This is kind of dumb. And he's like, stop doing that. You don't like that you're not naturally good at this. You're going to if you do this, there's going to be a lot of times you're going to have to overcome. And so I passed on my third chance. And then he starts telling me all these stories about people who start things like with the guy with Walmart. Like he loves to tell me Walmart story. He's like, no one talks about now how many times people told him no. They only talk about Walmart.
Correct.
And so I would tell them that be very careful looking at yourself through a limited mindset. And then I always, like the way I do things is I go forward in my life and I look backwards. And I always ask myself, if I don't do this, am I going to live with a little bit of regret?
That's huge.
And so I feel like every time in my life, even when I failed and I did not overcome it, I couldn't find a solution, I'm still so much more proud of myself than if I would have just played it too safe. So I would say that the worst thing that can happen is it not work. Martha down the street has something to say about you, like, told her it wouldn't work. But then it might work. And then you encourage Martha to actually do it.
That's exactly right. Yeah.
That's what I find, that sometimes even the people who downplay you or really try to discourage you, it's just from a place of where no one might have believed in them yet, or they really do need to see you do it so they know it's possible for them. The
lesson there actually goes back to your main point, which is, hey, done is better than perfect. You can improve it along the way, but don't let anything stop you. You come into contact with a lot of people. How do you try to leave people different and better than before they met you? I
heard a quote one time that said, people don't care how much you know till they know how much you care. And I loved that quote. So how I try to leave people better is I try to leave a lot of space for people to talk about themselves. I hate when I walk away from a conversation and I can tell that people were so concerned with saying the next thing and not really hearing me. So that's really something I focus on. I want people to leave and be like, Lo and I are two totally different people, but I feel like she really heard me and tried to understand me, tried to see where I was coming from, even if she didn't agree with it. That's something I really try to focus on, is just making sure people feel seen by me, heard by me, more than anything else.
Thanks for tuning in to I Finally Get It. To learn more about Lo and what she's got going on, please visit the show notes. And don't forget to like and subscribe so you never miss an episode. If you're an entrepreneur and you have a light bulb moment that would help another entrepreneur, reach out to me at jeff@ifinallygetit.com.